here to talk about the next topic. This was all about Charlie Benante from Anthrax talking about the music industry. And he says in the headline here, and it's all on alternativenation.net. It was a post on their Facebook page. It says, Charlie Benante thinks Metallica was right about streaming services, says they steal, and that Spotify is where music goes to die. I'm going to read a couple parts from this statement, but you can check it out if you want. He says, there is no music industry. This is what has changed. He responded, there is nothing anymore. There are people listening to music, but they are not listening to music the way music was once listened to. It is a different time now. And one of the quotes that he talks about is, I don't subscribe to Spotify. I think it's where music goes to die. We have the music on there because we have to play along with the effing game, but I'm tired of playing the game. And he also says that artists get taken advantage of the most out of any industry. Can't say he's wrong there. Folks, he's not wrong. Not at all. In fact, he said something very similar to myself back in 2018. Now, Charlie Benante was actually the first guest I ever had on my radio show. And we did an interview back in 2018 where I was celebrating the 20th anniversary of the show, and I had invited a lot of the people that were still alive, for that matter, onto the show who came on during the first year of the show to do an interview, and Charlie Benante was one of those people. This interview clip is him talking about the music industry with myself on my radio show back in 2018. Check this out.
Well, I think what happened with the music business was the ground kind of fell out from beneath all of us, and everybody kind of scrambled to think of ways of compensating for what had just happened or what has been taking place. Mm-hmm. And I think some bands who thought they were maybe smarter than other bands started to do things where we'll give the music for free and you tell us what you want to pay for it. And I thought that was really stupid to do, because maybe they thought that was the great thing at the time, but I felt it was just devaluing music and what we were doing. I mean, why would you do that? Does that mean that, all these chefs from around the world are saying, just come to my restaurant. If you like the food, just pay what you want, or don't even pay at all. Don't worry about it. I'll survive. And I just thought that was a real ignorant thing to do. And if we go deeper into this conversation of why this happened, you really have to put a lot of blame on the tech industry. As much as everybody loves Apple, I also think Apple had a big hand in destroying music. And nobody really says that. Everybody's still on the side of Apple, but I believe Apple was one of the big hands in this that helped destroy music. Mm-hmm. The record companies had a big hand in it because they got greedy. The artists got greedy when they felt, I could get a 3-album deal for $75 million. But at the end of the day, if they're taking all that money, what happens to the lesser-known bands who are striving to become something? What happens? Where does that money come from? I mean, it was just such a mess. Mm-hmm. And it really dug a hole for itself. And now who's paying for it? Everybody.
I've been doing this radio show for such a long time, as we talked before, and, it seems like the record companies really have not found any kind of successful business model to adapt to the more modern times either.
No, they're not going to either, because of streaming sites are very successful. And it just goes to show me, especially, I'm an audiophile, and I have to have the best quality of a song from my favorite band. But to a lot of people, that doesn't matter to them. It really doesn't. They'll listen to music on these little earbuds that really shrinks everything, and that's it, man. It's like, oh, it's my workout tape.
Yeah.
That's how it is. So the love of music, and I was just talking to someone about this yesterday. The reason why the title of our album is called Worship Music was because I worship music. I need it in my life. I need it every day.
Right.
And what happens when the time comes when there's not enough money and people have to have a GoFundMe thing to make some music? Then what happens?
Well, there's bands pretty much already doing that right now.
Yeah, I know they did, and it's like, that's sad, but that also it's like the breakdown of the family when you don't have a dad or you don't have structure anymore. That's exactly what's happened to music, and now you have to go and independently try and raise some money in order to live. Because it's all been broken down. The days of artist relations, artist development, all that stuff that was so important to, let's say a band had 3 records on a label that didn't really do so well, but then that 4th record, bam, it exploded, and then those 3 records prior to it also start moving. You'll never have that happen again.
Yeah, and it's funny. A good example. So let's say Metallica. Is a good example of that. When Injustice for All came out, that was a very big record for them, and it did so well that their previous 3 albums probably started to sell because of that, and so on and so on. And now these labels, they don't know what to do anymore.
Nobody knows what to do anymore. Everybody, like I said, is just like scavengers. They'll pick up whatever. Well, maybe this will work. Well, I'll try that. And that's why a lot of bands on tour are doing these meet and greet packages, because they have to find some way to fund the tour. You understand? Because records are not selling anymore, so the experience has become what is become profitable for the bands to exist, which I have a hard time with that, because I still, there's a piece of me that just feels like, man, making people pay for coming to see you is weird, but now you really have no choice and to do that.
That was Charlie Benante talking about the music industry and how streaming and downloads pretty much destroyed it. He's not saying anything differently now than he did back then in 2018 when I had him on my radio show. Now, obviously, streaming was not as prevalent when that interview was recorded, but essentially, he had the same viewpoints back then, and I completely agree with him. Because if you look at the quote on this, when he was asked about if he thought Metallica was justified for taking legal action against Napster in 2000, he said they were absolutely right about it. You see where it went. All those people who said F Metallica, they are rich bastards. They were protecting their art, their intellectual property, so that some a-hole does not come along and take your art. They make the money while you just make the art and you just give it away. And that's interesting, isn't it? Because musicians, the ones responsible for the actual music scene even existing, are typically the last ones to get paid. I've had that conversation with a lot of people. And if you listen to a previous podcast where I talked about record labels suddenly dropping bands and kind of more becoming like a legacy label where they're going to more or less put out back catalog stuff and reissues, and that's it. I played an interview clip with Blackie Lawless from WASP, where he talks about the downfall of the music industry. And in case you missed that clip, here it is.
The whole delivery system of the way records are done now is like I said, it's night and day, because, we all hated the majors. We refer to them as the evil empires, but the one thing that they could do is their delivery system, that factory machinery that they had, boy, when they decided they wanted to make something happen, it was a thing of beauty to watch it go into effect on a global level. And you don't have any delivery system like that anymore. I mean, the internet, as capable as it is, does not have the ability to harness entire groups of people and literally herd them in the same direction at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I said, it's night and day, and it doesn't work the same way as it once did.
Mm-hmm.
The guy that developed the model that we used for 50 years was Emmett Erdogan. He was the president of Atlantic Records, and we all used that model, like I said, for 50 years. Well, the internet came along and destroyed that model, and no one has since been able to develop a working model of a delivery system that gets, and when I say delivery system, I'm talking about the ability to get music from the recording studio to the consumer's house, into a kid's stereo, and until a delivery system is put together that allows that to be done on a mass level, because people listen to me saying now, yeah, well, I'm getting music. Well, you are, but you're not getting it on a mass level like used to happen even 10 years ago, and that's the reason people say to me now, they go, I was doing an interview the other day, and they said, where are all the great new frontmen coming from? And I said, well, there aren't any. And I says, and he says, why? And I says, well, because that huge machinery, excuse me, that huge machinery that were the majors, I said, that doesn't exist anymore.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing there to allow a new band to allow it to grow. There's nothing to support it, to enable it to develop. So you ask me, where all those new frontmen coming from? There ain't no more.
Mm-hmm.
You want to see Lemmy, you got to buy a ticket to Motorhead. You want to see Jeff Tate, you got to buy a ticket to Queensryche.
Mm-hmm.
When these guys are gone, they're gone, and they ain't coming back because there is no infrastructure set up to allow young bands to develop themselves the same way. I was telling this guy, I says, any band that can headline festivals or play stadiums, you better check them out now while you can, because when they're gone, they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
They're endangered species. They ain't coming back.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a sad thing, and I wish it wasn't that way. And I hate to be a doom prophet, but it's the truth. It just is the way it is. The majors had the ability to harness huge numbers of people and get them to go in the same direction at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
The internet cannot do that. The internet, although it has the ability to reach more people, cannot point all those people in a simultaneous direction simultaneously. So in other words, everybody's doing their own thing. The labels could get you to march in a single file in the direction they wanted you to go. That's not going to happen now.
Yeah. So do you think illegal downloading has really hurt things big time in the music industry?
Well, you tell me. When you're listening to your local FM station and they're playing the same 50 songs over and over again, and everybody's screaming and hollering about how bad it is, well, the reason they're playing those same 50 songs is because they ain't got no new music.
Yeah.
It's a very simple process. When everybody crucified Lars 10 years ago for standing up to Napster, saying he was greedy and that we should be able to have the things that we want, they didn't realize what he was talking about. He understood that if he continued to do that, it wasn't the bands that you were hurting. You were going to destroy the factory where the stuff was being made.
Yeah.
If you destroy the factory, you destroy everything.
Uh-huh.
I mean, we hated them out. They ripped off the fans, but more than that, they ripped off the bands.
Yeah.
We knew that. And he was trying to explain that to people, and nobody wanted to hear it.
And again, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but that interview clip with Blackie talks about the downfall of it from 2000 to 2011, 2012, when that interview aired on my radio show. And one of the things that Charlie talks about in this quote as well is, I take music very seriously, and what I do and what I write is very personal, and for someone to take it, it's not right. It is like I pay Amazon $12.99 a month, and I could just go on Amazon and I can get whatever I want. It is basically stealing. It is stealing from the artist, the people who run music streaming sites like Spotify. I agree. I have always said, too, that streaming is the new form of radio, except you get to pick the songs you want to hear whenever you want. That's the difference. And he's right. When you talk about paying, think about this. $12.99 for Amazon. Listen to as much music as you want. The artists, of course, get paid per stream. They get paid very little. I think somebody said at one point it was like 1 million streams to make minimum wage. And the crazy part about it is 84% of all music revenue is generated by streaming. It really is. These streaming companies are making tons of money off of other people's arts, off of their songs. And the artist is getting pennies for it. Now, I get there's infrastructure involved as far as the streaming apps and where the music is stored. I get there's an expense there. But when you have a company like Spotify paying $300 million, claiming they have no money, but they go and pay a soccer team, I believe it was FC Barcelona, $300 million to be a sponsor. Folks, they're making money. You just don't shell out over $250,000 to sponsor a soccer team in Spain, one of the better teams, I may add, if you're not making money. The artists are the last people to get paid, and ironically, they are the ones who essentially are the reason the scene in the business exists, which I think is BS. But think about it. You pay $12.99 for Amazon, right? In the old days, let's take Anthrax, for example. I ended up getting into Anthrax in the early 90s. First album I ever bought was Sound of White Noise. I think I paid $12.99 for the CD. Now, there was no streaming, really no internet back then. So I paid $12.99 to listen to one album. If I wanted to listen to Among the Living, I had to go buy it. Another $12.99. If I wanted to listen to Spreading the Disease, another $12.99. So you have about $40 in albums right there to listen to 3 albums. Now you could pay $12.99 to listen to millions upon millions of songs. And the artists per stream barely make any money. Folks, that's where the issue is. And Spotify is one of those things now that's pretty much relied upon by promoters. It's one of the biggest measuring sticks for promoters as to, are they going to book a tour in a certain area? So Charlie is not wrong. Folks, when Anthrax is gone, when Metallica is gone, when a lot of these other bands are gone, where's the music scene going to be? Because at some point you have to invest in new talent, right? You have to invest in the future of the scene. Right now they're not doing that. At least not in the metal scene. But when Gene Simmons comes out and says, how many iconic artists have come out since 1988? You could maybe count them on one hand. Whereas before that, in the 80s, in the 70s, in the 60s, in the 50s, and even the 40s, there were a ton of iconic musicians that came out. That is the difference. And he's correct. It's where music goes to die. Hey everybody, Tony here from the Metal Command podcast. Again, I appreciate your support. Since 1998, I have hosted this show in one form or another, starting off in radio and now in the podcast format. Again, thanks for watching, and if you like what you see and hear on this show, by all means, please hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell to be notified anytime I do post a video, and if you see this program on any other form of social media, please give me a follow there. Again, I always appreciate your support.